So we're going to talk about the first episode of Love Without Borders. So if you haven't seen it yet, I am the host and the dating and relationship expert of the show. And I'm going to tell you a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you didn't even get to see on the show. I mean, some of it's going to actually explain a lot more of what you're actually seeing. And today we're going to talk about my initial meeting with Gerline, my initial meeting with Phil, and my initial meeting with Dana. So what you don't know, I'm going to talk about meeting them for the first time, my impressions of them, and also taking them to the airport and their reactions, and just my perspective as a dating and relationship expert. So I've been giving advice for 15 years in terms of giving dating and relationship advice. So first, let's start off with Gerline. So you see some behind the scene clips of Gerline and I meeting for the first time, and also some behind the scenes with the process. So what these people are doing who are on the show, they have to fill out an extensive application and they have to go through lots and lots of meetings before ever getting on a show like this. So they talk to lots of people, my team, the production team. There's lots of behind the scenes stuff that all goes into getting these people in front of you, the camera, so that you viewers can see their whole journey. So my first time meeting Gerline, you don't even get to really see any of that. But Gerline, my first impression of her was I could feel that she was strong and independent. I also felt like that was some form of self-protection. And she was kind and sweet. And so at first she was very strong. And as you see on camera, that's her go-to, is to be very strong and be very independent. And, it supported her to get her where she is in her life now. But you're going to hear my advice about what gets you to where you are now doesn't always necessarily sustain you and make you go forward in a relationship. So Gerline opened up quite a bit with me about her family history, what you kind of saw in the synopsis of her interview. She said, San Diego didn't have a lot to offer. And so she wasn't really making any progress. She felt like people were just kind of like swiping and hooking up, but she wasn't going anywhere. And so that's why she reached out and became a part of this process of working with my team and getting on this show for this experience to find love. Behind the scenes, her dogs were barking everywhere. They're really sweet, but they bark a lot. They're little rescue dogs, so they're a bit jumpy. So they were super loud and super sweet at the same time. And you can tell that those are her babies. But Gerline was very strong, self-protected at first. But as we sat at her kitchen and as we talked, I was able to get through her walls, help her make her feel safe so that her walls could come down. And she started opening up, and she was super, super, super soft and vulnerable and tender in sharing her story. That's the one thing that I feel like you don't get to see about Gerline, is once you get past her walls, there is a tenderness there. And unfortunately, you don't get to see a lot of that on camera. But she had a wonderful home. It was really, really nice. And she was super kind to the production and the crew. We all ended up eating pizza at her house after we were finished filming, I think, the first time. And she was super gracious. A quirky thing I remember about her, which I actually appreciated, was she was like, this is a paper-free home. And so when we were eating pizza, she didn't have paper towels in our house, which every time I use paper towels, I now think about Gerline. I'm like, why am I using paper towels? But it's a paper towel-free home, so she only used cloth napkins. So that was something interesting about her. So at the end of the video, I'm going to talk to you about what happened when she broke down on camera, and when I show back up and I take her to the airport, and what happens in the car, because a lot happens in the car that you don't even get to see on camera when we're driving to the airport. I feel like sometimes that is one of the most intense times, is them in the car kind of getting antsy. So the next person I want to talk about is Phil. Phil is full of life, super bubbly. So you didn't get to see behind the scenes, but I showed up and he was in the middle of skating at a skate park. And Phil was just super bubbly, super full of life. But what you don't get to see on camera was, even Phil with the bubbliness and kind of being all over the place, it's kind of like we all put on these kind of personalities to protect what we're really feeling on the inside. I think we all do this. So for him, I felt like his self-protection was like being on camera, being lively, like that was his thing. But we sat outside of the skate park and it was beautiful. And I wish you could have seen this on camera. I don't know if they'll show this or not, but we had this beautiful moment where Phil really started talking about his upbringing with his dad and kind of like being raised by his brother and not really having his father in his life. Then he told the story of his mother and how when he was at school, he just kept crying and crying because he knew that something was not right. And this is a very tender moment. I'm so bummed that you don't get to see these tender moments in all of this, because these are the moments that actually show you who they are as a person. And, the production company, the crew, the post-production, there's so much content. Mind you guys, we're filming for 3 months, which I was on a plane. This is something that you don't know. I was on a plane for 3 months. Every 4 days, I was in a new state when we filmed in America. And then I was in a different country every 4 days. And we were doing this during COVID. So you can only imagine how intense it was. I mean, I was like showing up at an airport and they're like, did you fill out this vaccine? And no, I didn't know for this country. It was a mess. Flying during this time. It's super stressful. But yeah, every 4 days I was in a different country. So tons of content there that they just couldn't put everything into 10 episodes. So with Phil, we had this really powerful and precious moment. And he opens up about what he's done in therapy and trying to understand himself and trying to find himself and trying to heal himself. And when he shares the story of being in school and crying because, he just knew something was not right with his mom. And he just kept saying, I want to be with my mom. I want to be with my mom. And he found out that day that she passed away. And it was like he knew as a child that he was losing his mother. And so that part is so important. And I wish you guys could have seen that, because what happens at the airport, which I'm going to tell you at the end, what happened there is just mind-boggling what happens, and it becomes a really just shook moment. So the next person I want to talk about is Dana. And guys, it's another one. I'm like, damn it, there's a whole scene that you never get to see. I meet Dana, and I actually meet her in her van. And when Dana and I had first started talking, before I actually met her in person, I could tell she's open that she's been through some stuff, but she had her guard up pretty high, which I'm quite shocked, because I feel like in this show, she is one of the most vulnerable people. She's one of the most open people in this show about her emotions and her heart and her journey. And so I wish you could have seen the whole beginning, because she didn't start off that way. So I personally am really proud of her, because we all know that vulnerability is what makes relationships work. So to see her go through that shift was powerful, but we could see it in the moment that I'm meeting her in Montana, meeting her in her van, which, by the way, we're in Montana in the winter. It was freezing cold. They had in my pocket, they had heat warmers, and I was just sitting there just trying to connect with her, but shaking the whole time. And I don't know about you guys, but when I get nervous, I always have to pee. And so there was nowhere to pee. And the production was like, you got to pee, Arica, pee now, because there's not going to be anywhere to pee, because you're going to be in her van and it's just snow everywhere. And I was like, oh my God. So I show up in her van and we're sitting there. And so to be able to film in a minivan, guess what they had to do? This is why it was so cold. Let me give you the context. They had to keep her van doors open while the whole camera crew, we've got all these cameras filming us with the doors open. So I'm trying to connect with Dana, who I already feel like her walls are kind of high initially. And I'm freezing cold, which I hate to be cold. That's why I lived in Bali, Indonesia for before, when I was filming this show, I was living in Bali, Indonesia. Now I live in the south of France. Which, by the way, I saw on a YouTube comment on someone's review video. They're like, she probably just got on that show so she could travel and see the world. Honey, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Let me see your passport. Do you even have a passport? The person who said that. I've been living in France and Bali, lived in Thailand. So all of that happened before the show. I lived in England before the show. So some of you need to do your research before you go running your mouth and look through people's Instagrams and realize that girl was already traveling. She was doing her before the show. So to you. So Dana, while we're shivering cold out in the snow, which I hate, by the way, I began to ask her questions about her story. She was so open about her childhood, her experiences with her mom and her experiences with her father, and why she's living in a van and why it brought her to where she is, where she's just trying to find herself, fight for herself, do things on her own terms. And I don't know about you guys, but when you come from trauma, you almost have to rebuild who you are as a person. And no one ever teaches you that. There's no blueprint to do that. So, with Gerline, with Phil, with Dana, each of them shared deep personal history of really traumatic moments. And I have to say to all of them, you get to see their mess on camera, which, vulnerability is sometimes messy. And so what you don't understand, and maybe if you've gone through trauma, I hope that this helps you. The reality is you have experiences that happen in your life that are done to you, that you have no choice over, that leave a lasting impact, that affect with your nervous system, how you see the world, how you relate to the world, how you identify yourself. And no one out there right now, we're not far in advance. We're just now talking about emotional health consistently, but no one gives you a roadmap. So all of us, I've come from that as well. So all of us are trying to find ourselves and redeem ourselves, reclaim ourselves on our own terms. So my hat really goes off to these guys who come from such hard backgrounds, and to be able to share that on camera, to share it with me, a stranger, and to share that with you guys, that's really, really hard. And to be in the middle of figuring it out, let's just stop and give them a hand clap for doing that, because that is, I want to say, what I want to, huge. It's huge to be able to do that. And I really commend them on that. So Dana, those walls came down and she began to really share her heart. She was crying. She was talking about her little girl. She has a picture of her little girl in her van. And I was like, let's talk about that little girl. And so we did some of that inner girl work in the van on camera. And you guys will never get to see that. And it's so disappointing, because it's when you see them in these countries, you're like, I see why Gerline is the way she is. I see why Phil is the way he is. I understand why Dana is the way she is, but you don't have that context. And sometimes we judge people when we don't know their story. But if you knew their story, you'd be like, it all makes sense. So this is the whole beginning journey of me meeting them. And then now let's talk about the airport scene. So, flash. They have no idea that they are going to get surprised by me, and I'm showing up to tell them they have to leave in this moment to go to the airport. So when I meet them for the first time, I tell them, you better have your bags packed. You got to have your affairs in order, because if we find you a match, you have to go right then and there. So I think hearing that and cameras everywhere, it kind of makes it feel like it's not real. But the reality was, it was super, super real. So here's the thing. The producers kind of have them doing things to kind of keep them distracted. But they had no idea that Arica Angelo is showing up and knocking on their door and telling them it's time to go. So let's start with Gurleen. I show up, Gurleen's like, oh my God. And the reason why, some of the casts, I still talk to some of the cast, and some of them have come to me and they said, it was really hard the way, you guys just surprised me like that. And I was like, yeah, but that was real. Like, we told you to have your affairs in order. It's not like, okay, tell you one thing on camera and then behind the scenes we manufacture stuff. No, this is like a docu-series. It's real. So with Gurleen, when I first got there, you see her on the couch and she's like being like, okay, cool, brave, really doing it. But I could feel inside, I was like, this is not real. She's putting up a front. She's being brave, but she's going to break. She's acting too cool and like, yeah, let's just do this. And I'm like, this isn't real. So like, we're literally in her home. She's like, what do I pack for, Arica? Tell me, she likes to be in control. So listen, anyone in that situation would want to be in control because it's freaking scary to just pack up and go. So she's like, what do I pack for? And what I have to tell all of them is you have to pack for everything because I can't tell them where they're actually going. So we're packing like bathing suits, coats, like you name it. We were just stuffing stuff. We were in her bathroom. Like, she had a great bathroom, by the way, behind the scenes. Like, I just need to throw it out that Gurleen's like toiletry is like on point. Like her makeup, her hair stuff, perfumes, like her bathroom, I wanted to just play in there for like hours. She had so many good products in there. I was like, can we just stop this and do a makeup show? Because you have some really good stuff in there. So we're going through and I'm like, she's just being way too like cool and put together about this. And then they do show you on camera. She does break and that's real. And she was like, and she's just like, is this real? Is this real? I'm like, yeah, no, this is actually really real. You're actually going today. And she broke. And I think that's a normal reaction, but you see it on camera. She actually just starts like crying and she's just like, she asked for us to turn off the cameras. We gave her a moment to just be by herself. But at the end, they were also on a schedule. Like, they have to secure airports and go. You guys have no idea what it takes to do this kind of show. I don't even know what it takes because the producers do everything for the behind the scenes. So everything has to be on a schedule and you have to let it be real and let these people be in the real and have their moment. And so she was having her moment. So it's tricky because you want to give her space, let her feel what she's feeling, but also you're conscious that you have this allotted time at the airport that you have to be in and be out because they have rules. Like you can film and then you got to go. So it really, really just freaks out. And, we don't know. We don't know if she's actually going to go through with it or if she's going to say, no, I can't do this anymore. I mean, there's a lot on the line in these moments. And so I talked to her when the producers had to come in and talk to her. And so she finally just kind of like, she got it together, finished packing her bags, and then we're off to the airport. So we are on our way to the airport. She's really smart. I'm like, she totally started deflecting. And the whole time she was like, well, tell me about you and tell me about tell me about you living in Bali and tell me. And so when people don't want to talk about themselves, they want to talk about the other person. And so I started telling her about my story, which one of the producers got pissed off at me, or she didn't get pissed off, but she was just like, the show is not about you, it's about them. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't make people feel comfortable just putting all the emphasis on them. You have to create a mutual exchange of vulnerability. So I had to ignore that person and just do what I felt was right, which was, told her about my story in Bali and why I moved out there and that my dream was to live in the south of France. And so we got to talk about that. And so the whole time we're in the car, guys, there's a camera like right there sitting on, like, have you ever thought about how they film it? They've got lights in the top of the car and they've got a camera guy, just bless his heart, Johnny, shout out to our camera guy, the best guy ever, is sitting there having to hold this with his seatbelt on, getting nauseous while we're filming this very heartfelt scene. And the whole time she's just like, can you just tell me where I'm going? And I'm like, she's like, where am I going? And my response to all of them was, that's a great question. So we get to the airport and you never know how people are going to respond with these countries. And with Gurleen, like, we didn't know, like, how she was going to respond with going to If you haven't seen it, you have to just stop because you're going to find out. She goes to Dubai, and it's like, you don't know if these people are going to go, I don't want to go to that country. You just don't know in that moment. She, surprisingly, was really like, she was on board. She was excited about it. That was great. So she really, that freak out moment was real. The next one was Phil, and this is why I wish you could hear his story. So Phil, we go and get his haircut. Behind the scenes, what you don't see on camera is his cousin threatening me. And she was like, if you put my cousin with a bad net, I'm coming for you. I'm going to find you. Like, you don't see any of that on camera. You just see me like standing there watching him get his hair cut off, which we figure out is like, find out that it's like fake. But like, it was this whole thing. I thought it was real because he's making such a big deal about cutting it off. And then we find out, no, it's just weave. I was like, why get out of here? But his cousin shows up and she like starts to like threaten me on camera. I'm like, we're fine. We're good. Let's move on. So Phil the whole time is like trying to like get information out of me. And the producer's like, you cannot talk to him. You can't tell him what's going on. So I'm trying to like keep Phil like in the loop of like, we're getting to the airport because like I said, you don't know they're going to bell. So Phil is like getting his hair cut right before we go to the airport. It's all happening that day. And so we get to the airport, and this is a part you don't see. So I'm trying to like be like this cheerleader, like, you're going to Ghana, like selling them on the country. Like, I hope you don't freak out and say, I'm not going, because we would have major problems. So I say to Phil, you're going to Ghana. But then Phil doesn't have like his typical Phil reaction, which is very big, very over the top, which I appreciate because I can make the same. He doesn't get that at all. He's just like, whoa, Ghana. And I was like, oh boy. In my mind, I'm going, oh shit. He doesn't want to go to Ghana. I'm like, oh, we've got a problem here. And then this story comes out. And this is where I was shook. This story comes out that his mother, her last trip was in Ghana. She was building schools with the Marley family. When he said that, you don't see this on camera, you guys, but when he said that, it was like everything disappeared. I still get chills talking about it. Everything disappeared. The cameras disappeared. The producers, the whole crew, everyone just disappeared. The airport people, the busyness of being at an airport, everything went silent. And I just had chills all over my body. And I just started crying and shaking. And I was like, Phil, are you kidding? He said, Erica, I swear to God, this was the last moment for me in Ghana. And, you know, I'm a little concerned about my boy Phil because I haven't seen him very active on Instagram. But, like, I feel like there was something there, and I don't know. I would love to hear, like, his story, but obviously there was something that his mother in heaven or whatever, you know, I believe that's his belief system, was rearranging for him to get him there. And so that moment, you guys, was so powerful. Like, when he walked off, I was just shaking and crying. Like, I still remember hearing one of the crew telling one of the producers, we've got Arica crying. They talked to each other walking topics. They were like, we've got Arica crying or something like that. It was so powerful. And it was like one of those, I don't know if you've ever had one of those God moments where you just feel God and there's that presence there. We felt that. I don't know if it was his mom or angels or God or what, but in that moment, we had goosebumps. It was such a powerful moment. I was super, super shook. So that's Phil. That was powerful, him going off to God. The next one is Dana. So Dana, you don't see us talking, like I said, in the van. You missed all of that. You missed all of her story, all of the like good stuff that make these people so damn lovable and interesting, and like you're invested in them. You're like pouring out your heart. You're cheering for them. Dana, when I show up to her, she's actually like gutting her van, and I'm actually helping her move her stuff in the storage, and they don't show any of that. I'm helping. It's me, her, and her brother, which her brother is fabulous, by the way. I fell in love with her brother. He's the funniest guy, like just really good, bubbly energy, just like Dana. And he was just like, Arica, please take care of my sister. Please find her a good guy. But you don't get to see any of that. So I'm in the van and I'm helping her pick out her clothes. I'm like, let's pick out your clothes on what you're going to wear. And I'm like, and so we're having to put these layers because once again, she doesn't know if she's going to a cold place or a warm place. And the same with Phil. Oh my God, you guys, him bringing those cleaning supplies. I'm going to tell you something else really quick about Phil. He had me such a nervous wreck over this cleaning stuff. I think we had to take off our shoes when we went in his house, which in Bali, we do that all the time there. And I do that here in my home now in South France. But that part I was okay with. But he was like, so like, no, I'm bringing these cleaning supplies with me. I'm like, you're not bringing cleans. You have no room in your luggage. You're packing for 2 different climates. There's no way you're bringing cleaning supplies. They're going to spill. They're going to be everywhere. Just buy them when you get there. But he had me so on edge. I remember as we were leaving and the camera crew's like trying to get him out the door, which it took forever to get Phil out of the damn door and into the G-Wagon so we could go. It took forever. But I remember I was so nervous about his cleaning that I was literally like doing his dishes in the sink just so he didn't freak out. I was like, I got your dishes. I'm doing your dishes. Just freaking get out the door. Because mind you, we're on a schedule. He has to get his hair cut. And then we have to be at the airport within our filming allotting time. So what a mess. So Dana, I'm helping her pack. We're trying to find clothes, which that was something Miss Darlene I was not impressed with. Like, I asked Darlene specifically, do you have an outfit picked out for the airport? And she was like, oh, yeah, very nonchalantly before her meltdown. Then I was like, okay, come down your outfit. This girl comes down in some like sweatpants and a wool jacket. And I'm like, girl, you did not pick that. I've seen her clothes. Like, girl has clothes. She has good clothes. But that, I'm like, you do not sign up to be on a TV show and you're about to meet the love of your life wearing sweatpants. I think she was just so nervous in the experience that it wasn't a priority for her in that moment because her whole life was getting turned upside down. But if you're ever going to go and meet somebody, make sure you're dressed to the nine. So Dana was more open-minded about her clothes. Miss Darlene was independent and did her own thing. And I came down the stairs waiting for this outfit. And I'm like, it was like Sex in the City when Carrie's like, I found the dress. And they're like, she's wearing a no-name. And she comes down in these sweats. And I was like, and she's wearing a no-name to meet the love of her life. Great. Dan, on the other hand, I was like, do you want me to help you figure out clothes? She was like, yeah. I was like, great. I love clothes. And so as you get to see, I have fabulous clothes on the show. And I repeated this outfit so that you guys could see it. I saw it online where people were like, where did she get that? So Dana, I get to help her unpack her van with her and her brother had been taking it apart the night before, but we were like taking her clothes and going through her clothes. She was keeping it together pretty well, which I was really impressed. But then what you see on camera, which I didn't get to see, was she does break down, but she doesn't break down till she's in the plane. So that girl had held it all together. She held everything in front of all of us until she got on the plane. So we got her back, and then we took her, and you don't even see this on camera. We took her to go sell her van. I was like, this girl, I'm like, are you out of your mind? You're selling your van? Oh my God. And she had told me, another thing you don't see, she told me in the van about the song that she wrote for her husband, and she sang it to me, and I was like, oh, I could have cried when she sang it to me. Because it was like the story unfolding. I was like, and here we are. And she was saying like, I want to go and live like on a farm, and I want to be, and I was like, oh my God, she has no idea where we're sending her. So she was pretty cool. I have to say, Dana was pretty cool, calm and collected, from gutting her van the night before to us going through her clothes to us taking her to a dealership and selling her van, that's her home, you guys. That's a big deal. It's not just selling a car, it's selling your home. And I was like, girl, did you get that money? Because you know us women, we got to get the money. It's got to be independent. And so she got her money. And then I was like, okay, we're off to the airport. And so sending her to Ireland with the cow luggage, you guys, I mean, we couldn't have put this together if we tried. When I saw her luggage, I said to the producer, I was like, you got to be kidding me. We're sending this girl to a farm she doesn't even know, and she went and bought cow luggage. What Gerline bought, I had to say, Gerline's luggage was quite, I'm in South France. Gerline's luggage was quite chic. She bought some away luggage, and I found that to be really chic. But Dana comes in with this cow luggage. I'm like, you guys, we couldn't have planned for that. From the Phil situation with his mom and Ghana, we didn't know about this, to now Dana and her cow luggage going to Ireland. You got to be kidding me, you guys. It was just too perfect. And like some of the behind the scenes stuff is so magical that you're just like, there's something going on here, because we can't plan for this sort of stuff. So that's a lot of behind the scenes. So I feel like my advice was, everyone, this is just the beginning phase. So they don't really they're not really sharing anything yet that we get to see in terms of what to give them advice on our relationships. But I will say this, that each of them, and one thing that I admired and appreciated about them, which you don't see, so you don't get as invested in them. It's like when you know someone's story, you get super invested in them. You want to cheer them on. The problem with this is you don't get to hear any of their stories. So it's very hard to be invested in them. It's the same production company who did Love is Blind. And what I love about Love is Blind is you get invested to these people. You hear their stories, but because we had too much, you never really get to hear everyone's story. So you don't get as invested in these people. I was super invested in these people because I got to hear their stories, and I felt super honored that they would share as much as they did with me. And I had profound respect for them. And I think that for any of us, one of the challenges, and I'll share this with you, one of the challenges is being vulnerable with our friends. And that's kind of a safe place. But when it comes to love and being vulnerable in a relationship and with someone that you could possibly get your heart broken by, or, get into a loving relationship, that's where vulnerability becomes a real challenge. And I always say to my client and in my YouTubes is, you have to become an emotional warrior, because I'll never forget, and I'll close with this advice so that you can use this in your life. I'll never forget this, and tell me in the comment section if you have this problem as well. I remember working with a client. We were talking about vulnerability because he was trying to get a girlfriend back. And he said, well, I can be super vulnerable with my girl best friend. And I said, but that's just it. Your best friend can't break your heart. But when you get in that relationship, your heart is on the line. It's like your balls are on the table. Your ovaries are on the table they're tender objects that can be broken, And so the challenge is for many of us is to not just be vulnerable with the people who are friends or who are on the outside of our heart, but it's the people who get on the inside of the heart. Maintaining vulnerability with those kind of people, that's when it really counts. It's when it really matters. And I always tell my clients, if you have to become this emotional warrior, we're not really taught this anymore about how to be strong when we're not comfortable, when we have to be vulnerable and share our inadequacies. So for them to share that with me, I really commend that, and that takes a lot of courage. But the next step for each of these, for Gerline, for Phil, and for Dana, is to be able to maintain that vulnerability inside of the relationship. So if you need help with any of this, go to my website, aricaangelo.com. I have a free masterclass for you, the 5 shifts to help you get the love that belongs to you. Coaching people for 15 years, I saw a bunch of clients who I was like, they're doing this wrong. But the ones who did it right and who found themselves in a marriage, which if you watch that masterclass, you'll see one of my clients, he ended up marrying Beyonce's cousin. And he says at their wedding, he was like, he brings me up in front of everyone. He was like, it's because of this woman I found my wife. So when I see people like him and other clients who have found their love, there are 5 things that they did differently from the rest of the clients who I thought they're just going to keep doing the same damn thing until they give up and go, okay, I've got to change. So if you want to know what those 5 things are that my clients did to actually get the love that belongs to them, get that free masterclass and watch it. immediately. It will change your life. Listen, you are loved. I can't wait to share about the second episode with you guys. Thank you guys for watching and continue to watch it. We appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Know that you're loved. Know that you are worthy of love and that it does belong to you. But there are some times that we need to make changes. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe. Turn on the notification bell because it won't tell you about the next video unless you turn on the bell and tell YouTube that you want the notification. Otherwise, you won't even get to see it. So I've got more videos for you, and I will see you with my second episode video, my tell-all with you guys. Take care. Bye.